In this video, we're going to walk through how to use Respondus to take questions from an existing, properly formatted Word document and convert them into a Blackboard readable format. The idea here is that it will make your test building and test creation a little simpler, particularly if you have a file that's all ready to go. To start this process off, I do have a file, a Word file, that is all ready to go. It's properly formatted with syntax that Respondus will understand. We can see here that each question has its own number in front of it, followed by a period and a space, and those numbers are sequential. Each question has its answers designated with an A or a B, followed by a period and a space. That could also just as easily be a closed bracket instead of the period. And I have all of my questions here indicated with a correct answer by using an asterisk. So this file is ready to go. And when I have my file all ready to go, I can go over to my Respondus program. When I have Respondus open, I'm going to come down here to the option that says Import Questions. This is what's going to let me use a file that I already have set up to grab those questions and pull them into Respondus so that it can convert them for me. So if I click on Import Questions, I'm going to have to tell the system a little bit about the file that I'm using. First thing I'm going to need to tell it is what kind of file. So I could do this just as easily with a plain text file or rich text, but in this case I'm using a docx file. I will choose that, and then I can tell Respondus what my file name is. I'll browse my computer to find it, just like I would for any other file. I'll select the one that I want and click on Open. From there, all I have to do is tell Respondus if I want to create a new document or if I want to append the questions to the current document. I'm creating a new test here, so I'm going to use the Create New Document option, and I need to name that test. So I have a number of tests in here already, so we will call this Test 12. I can also tell Respondus if I want this to be an exam or a survey. In my case, this is a test for my students, so I'm going to go with exam. And then I can click on this preview button, which will let me check for problems in my file. So Respondus is accessing that file right now, and it's pulling up my questions. And you can see here, if you look right down at the bottom under warnings and notes, that I did actually have a problem with my file. So if there are any challenges with the questions, if there's anything in those questions that isn't as it should be, Respondus will let you know. In this case, we can see that one of my questions had no correct answer, so it automatically set the first answer as correct. Now I know that's not right, so if I come back to my file, I can go to question 5. I can indicate which answer is in fact the correct answer in that file. And then if I come back to Respondus, I can click on Preview again, and if I've done that correctly, I should have no warnings. So everything looks good here. I can see if I look on the left-hand side that all of my questions seem to have imported properly, and there are no problems with that. And from there, I can click on Finish, and that will pull all of those questions into Respondus. And it will confirm that that file has saved. Once my test has been imported into Respondus, I have the option to edit any questions that I want to make changes to. At the bottom of my screen here, I can see a list of all of my questions. I've got a question title, if there is one. If there wasn't, then it's the same as the question wording. I have the question format, so I've got some true, false, and some multiple choice and multiple answer. I have the points for each question, and then I have the actual question itself. In most cases, if you are working with a properly formatted and ready to go Word file, there shouldn't be a lot of editing that you need to do, but if you do feel like making changes, you can come over here, click on the drop down for a question, and choose to edit it. And this will let you make any changes that you want to here. You can change the wording, you can change the answers. If something you've realized is incorrect needs to be changed, you can change the point value, and then you can click on Save Changes when you're done. The other thing that you can do once you've got your questions into Respondus is to set the settings for your test. So I've clicked on the Settings tab at the top here. And for my test, I can set all of the same settings that I could set in Blackboard, but I can do it here before I put my test into the course. So if I come here and if I click on the Availability option, you'll see that the settings that I've got are exactly the same as for deploying a test in Blackboard. I can choose to open my test in a new window. I can choose to make my exam visible to students, and if I don't do that, when Respondus puts my test into Blackboard, it's not going to be visible to them, so I can change that after the fact if I need to. I can choose to put in an announcement, I can do multiple attempts, force completion, set time limit, and all of the display options and due date options that I would typically have available to me. So I can do the settings for the test here rather than doing them in Blackboard. I do have all of my options for other settings as well. So all of those pieces around things like self-assessment, the feedback options, and question presentation, I can set all of these here as well, the same as I would do for a test in Blackboard. It's just happening here instead. Once I've made my selection for these settings, I can come one tab over again and I can preview and publish. Now, preview is a really nice option because it lets you see all of your questions very similarly to how they will show up in Blackboard on the test. So if I click on preview the file, I will see my questions one at a time. This is question 1 out of 10. And I can see what the question is, and then I can see the answer down here. So I can confirm that everything is as it should be. And I can just progress through those questions just to make sure that everything is as I want. And then if I need to, I can modify the item over here as well. So all of these things are flexible, all of these things can be changed. Once I have everything as I want it, I can come over here to the Publish option. Respondus has a built-in Publish wizard that will help you to take the files that you have already put into Respondus and take them and put them into Blackboard for you. So if I click on Publish Wizard, that's going to open up a new screen, and there are a few different settings that I can play around with. The first one is the type of publishing that I want to do at the top here. So I have the option to publish to a single course. I can batch publish to multiple courses if I am, for instance, teaching multiple sections of the same class. Or I can save the file to my computer and then take that and import that into Blackboard instead. So depending on what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, I have a few different options that are available to me. The next thing that I have to do is to choose a server. Now, if you haven't used Respondus before, this is not going to have any server information in it, but there is pre-configured information for the Niagara College server. So if I click down the drop down here, we have the option to add a new server. And you can see here that there is an option for checking for pre-configured server settings. If you choose that one and click on Next, Respondus should be able to find our server and connect to it. If that doesn't work though, you can always get in touch with IT to help you set that up. In my case, I already have server set up, so I'm going to go with Gen Server. And once I have that ready to go, I'm going to click on Next to connect to the server. And it's going to ask me to log into Blackboard using the browser window. So when I click on OK, we're going to get a new browser window. And this is not one of your typical computer browsers. This is just for the purpose of signing into Respondus so that it can access your Blackboard course. I will put in my email here and click on Next. And I will put in my password. And as per usual, the system is going to call me for approval. So I will answer that call. I will approve the sign-in. And we should be good to go. I'm going to tell it that I want to stay signed in. And then once I can see my Blackboard courses, I'm going to click on this button up here that's close after login. Back here, I can click on OK. And Respondus is going to connect to my Blackboard. Once I've done that, I can choose the course to publish in. Now, I have a lot of courses here, but I think I will put this one in my development course, just because it's an easy one to find. And then I can make some other selections around the settings here. So I can choose to create an exam or replace an existing one. In this case, I'm going to create a new one. I can also do this as a pool instead. So if I don't want those questions sent out to students, but I want them to sit on the back end of Blackboard for later use, I can choose to do a new pool or replace an existing pool if I feel so inclined. And then I have a few options down here for things like apply random blocks to the exam, apply settings to the exam. So those settings that I set up earlier, I can choose to have them applied or not. And I can choose to link the exam to a content area and make available. So if I did just want to create the test and put it on the back end of Blackboard, I could deactivate the settings option and the content area option. In this case, though, I do want my test to just show up in Blackboard. So I'm going to click on Next. And Respondus is going to ask me where I want to put this. So for me, this is an assignment. I'd like it to go in my assignments area. And then I can click on Next. It will process that. It will tell me when it's finished. And I can click on Finish. And so that is sitting in my Blackboard now, in my assignments area. And it is ready for me to go in and deploy to students or to alter the settings. If I then come over to my course in Blackboard, I can come to Assignments, and I can see that my test is sitting here. Now for this test, I didn't change any of the settings. So this test has not been deployed to students, and it doesn't have any of the typical settings attached to it. So if I click on its dropdown, I can go in and I can edit the test options, just like I normally would. And I have all of the typical options still available to me. So I can choose to do that through Respondus. I can choose to do that here instead. In either case, the test has been deployed into my course and I can access it here. If I had turned off some of the options around things like the test settings and having the test put into a content area, my test would instead be sitting under my course tools and then under test surveys and pools. And my test would be here, sitting under tests. Now, if I were using Respondus and having some trouble either connecting to my Blackboard or being able to log in, I do have another option for getting that file into my Blackboard. If I go through the Publish wizard again, one of the options that I have available to me is that I can save my pool to a local file for manual uploading. And if I choose that, you'll see that it's going to gray out the server information. Then if I click on Next, it's going to give me some options for saving that file. So I can choose to save as, and in my case, I think I'm going to put that on the desktop. And so it knows where I want to save it now. And I can choose to either save that as a pool, so a set of questions that are going to sit on the back end of Blackboard and can't be directly sent out to students as a test, but can be included in a test going forward. Or I can put that in as a test as something that I intend to deploy to my students. In this case, I think I'm going to go with a test. And then all I have to do is click on Finish. So that file has been saved to my desktop now. And if I come back to my Blackboard once more, I am in my tests area. So that means that I have gone through, once again, my course tools, my test surveys and pools, and into my tests. And if I click on Import Test, this is going to let me browse my computer for a file. I chose to save my test file to my desktop. So if I go there, I should find that test. And this is a zip file, which means that it is readable by Blackboard. So I will choose that. I'll click on Open, and then I can click on Submit. I will be told that my package has been processed. And then if I go back into my tests area, I should see that I have my test here. Now I have two test 12s because I already deployed one using Respondus earlier. This second one is the one that I just put in here, and I can see that that test hasn't been deployed. So once that's into Blackboard, I can deploy it like I would any other test. If I wanted to do this under assignments, I could come up to assessments, choose my test, pick the test that I'm looking for, and then click on Submit. And once again, I would have all of the usual options for things like availability and how students are able to complete that test. So this is just another way to get the same thing into your Blackboard. If you are running into any challenges with logins, with accessing Blackboard, with Respondus not working the way you expected to, this is a really great workaround for that, and it doesn't take much more time and should in fact still save you a lot of time, particularly if you're converting a fairly long test.